On this edition of Larry the Golf Guy, we are fortunate enough to be joined by Hall of Famer Lanny Wadkins. Lanny, of course, had a tremendous career on the PGA Tour, 21 wins over a 21-year period, included a PGA victory, Players' Championship, PGA Player of the Year in 1985, and much more. He also had a just tremendous Ryder Cup record, played in 8 Ryder Cups, and also compiled just an awesome record of 2011 and 3. We talked with Lanny about how he got started in the game as a youngster growing up in Richmond, Virginia, his college golf experiences at Wake Forest, his stellar amateur record, which included the U.S. Amateur and playing on 2 Walker Cup teams. And then we talk at length about his victory at the 1977 PGA, which was the first sudden death playoff in major championship history, and go into detail about his Ryder Cup experiences, including his 4-0 record against Ballesteros and what it was like to play against Seve. Lanny was really at the Ryder Cup at a pivotal time when the format was changed to add the Europeans to the pros from the UK. And we talk about that and about the 1983 Ryder Cup, where he made a phenomenal shot on the last hole to secure the victory for the U.S. at PGA National in Florida. He was also part of the War at the Shore in '91. So we talk a lot about the Ryder Cup, and we also talk about his experiences with the great Ben Hogan, played a number of rounds with him, both of them being from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where Lanny has lived for a long time, and also his broadcast career at CBS and the Golf Channel, which he did after his playing days. And finally, we wrap up with his thoughts on regulating equipment at the touring pro level. He has some interesting thoughts on that. Really a fun and engaging conversation with one of the greats, Lanny Wadkins, up next on this edition of Larry the Golf Guy. Well, welcome to another edition of Larry the Golf Guy, and I am so thrilled today to welcome to the podcast Hall of Famer Lanny Wadkins. Lanny, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today.
Larry, my pleasure. Good being with
Good being with you. So, as I often like to do for our listeners, just to kind of go back in time to give people a little context. Believe you grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Maybe you can talk about kind of how and when you were first introduced to the game of golf.
Well, by my fathers, a lot of people were, back in those days, my dad had come back from World War II and took up golf, and my dad was a truck driver. So he was gone a lot of times during the week, gone a week, and he'd come home on weekend and want to go play public golf. So, and I'm about 7 years old. I said, Dad, can I go with you? And I went along, pulled his cart. I said, this is cool. And next thing you know, he got me a set of clubs. We played, and then they joined we lived on the south side of Richmond. I had a brand new country club named Meadowbrook Country Club that I think they could join for $250. So
Wow.
my dad joined, and my brother and I went out there, and we were lucky. We had a pro that loved kids, did great junior clinics, took us under his wing, and essentially that's the way it started. So being a brand new club, we didn't have any restrictions. As kids, we could even go play on weekends, whatever.
Wow.
We weren't stopped playing on Saturdays and Sundays. So we just played and played and played. And as we got, 10, 11, 12 years old, it was nothing for Bobby and I to play 54 holes a day. We just played all the
Oh,
time. So,
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm just curious. I mean, we'll get into your amateur career and of course your time at Wake Forest, but the fact that you got an Arnold Palmer Golf Scholarship to Wake Forest, you must have been quite an accomplished junior player. Did you play in a lot of regional national events, or how did that go?
well, we didn't have enough money to play many national events. The one that I did go playing, I was 13 years old. I'd already won, I think, state levels in my age group and city junior championships in my age group, stuff like that. Played the National Pee Wee in Orlando, Florida.
Oh yeah.
This is back in the day when we had to get there. So my parents put my 11-year-old brother and myself on a train overnight to Orlando by ourselves.
Wow.
And then I was met, my grandfather was a friend of the police chief of Orlando, a guy named Stoney Johnstone, who met us. And we stayed with him, and I won the tournament, went back, but, won it 2 years in a row. And then,
Wow.
but when I came back, the scary trip was coming back at night with that big trophy. And all these guys, what do you got there, kid? I'm like, this train trip needs to hurry and get over with, get us back to Richmond. But
That's
I
great.
putting two kids, 13 and 11, on a train like that today.
No,
Different time,
yeah.
different time.
Different times, totally different times. I love that story. That's great. So, when it came time to college, did you kind of was Wake Forest kind of an easy choice? I'm sure you probably had different places to think about.
I knew that I wanted to go to a golf school. I wanted to play golf in college. And to me, the three golf schools at the time were Houston, Florida, and Wake Forest. So
Right.
I got offers from from all the other schools everywhere from Virginia to Notre Dame. And I just told them all I wasn't interested. I wanted to go to one of those three. Made up my mind, visited those three, went to a great football game, LSU football game in Florida. Probably the worst trip I had was to Wake Forest, but I love the school.
Yeah.
The coolest one I had was my trip to Houston for my recruiting trip. I was actually at the Astrodome for the
Wow.
game of the century at the time between UCLA and Houston with Lou Alcindor
And
and
Elvin Hayes. Yeah, that was a great game.
I was at that game. That was my recruiting trip to Houston.
Wow.
I remember when I worked with Jim Nance at CBS, who went to Houston and goes,
Sure.
how can you not go to Houston? I said, Jimmy, I saw the rest. So, but I love Wake Forest. I think that having been in a high school, a new high school of only 700, 800 students, the size of Houston and Florida may have intimidated me a little bit. So Wake Forest was 3,500 students, closer to home. My girlfriend at the time was going to William and Mary, so it just seemed like everything fit at the time to go back there.
Awesome. And what was your college golf experience like? Talk to us about that.
And I loved every second of it. I was my freshman year. I had a really good freshman year. I won the conference championship, but I was
Wow.
with three seniors. Two of them were first team All Americans. One was a second team All American. So Jack Lewis, Leonard Thompson, Joe Inman. We ended up having probably the worst week of the whole year when we finished second in the NCAA. We won everything else. We had a great team, a lot of fun, a lot of travel, a lot of good stories. And then the next couple of years, we had great guys in the teams, and we were competitive. Came close to winning NCAA a couple of times. Individually, I think I finished 10th as a freshman, uh,
Wow.
second and as a sophomore, and sixth my junior year. So I was top 10 in the NCAA every year.
Wow.
Won the U.S. Amateur Balls at Wake Forest, along with a lot of other stuff in amateur ranks. But
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, tremendous amateur. We should just talk about that. I mean, so, Southern Amateur, Northeastern, back my neck of the woods at
yeah, I won the Northeast.
Rhode Island.
Played the Northeastern. I won the Eastern Amateur.
Oh, the Eastern Amateur. I'm sorry.
With
Okay, the Eastern.
Virginia, I won the Southern twice. I actually
Right, that's right.
won the Southern Amateur before I went to Wake Forest. I won it after my senior year in high school when I was 18.
Wow. Wow.
I won it again in 70. I won the Western Amateur, U.S. Amateur, Dixie Amateur.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, tremendous career.
and played on two Walker Cup teams while I was at Wake Forest, and also played the Masters twice while at Wake Forest. So that was
And I
cool.
want to ask you about that one. So, if I'm remembering right, I was trying to put this together quickly this morning. Is it true that you played with Gene Sarazen at the Masters?
It is that first year in '70. Actually, the Tom Watson and I were the babies. We were amateurs staying in the crow's nest together.
Right.
Tom screamed bloody murder in his sleep all night long. I said, I don't know at Stanford, but we haven't discovered that at Forest yet. Uh, our time. But yeah, I played my first round at the Masters with Jackie Burke, former Masters champion, which when you're an amateur, you play with a former champion. And then I played the second round with Gene Sarazen. So I played in the Masters with Gene Sarazen. I had enough presence of mind as a 20-year-old that when I got to 15, I asked him to walk across his bridge with me, which was very cool. If it was today, I'd have it on YouTube or something. But I
Right.
walked across the Saracen Bridge with Gene Saracen. So in the
How cool is that?
that was very, very cool. But yeah, very, very neat. And back then the entire Walker Cup team got in the Masters. That's
Right.
how
That's right. Yeah.
time. Watson got in by finishing top 8 in the U.S. Amateur in '69 at Oakmont, so he got in '70, and then I won the Amateur in '70, so that put me in for 2 more years that I stayed amateur. But I turned pro after the one time. So anyway, great experiences, and kind of got me a head start on seeing what the tour was like. I actually qualified for the Greensboro Open my freshman year at Wake Forest. Played in the GGO as a 19-year-old, made the cut. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, first time I ever played in the tournament at Greensboro and at Sedgefield, and I guess it was '69. So
Wow, that's amazing. So you decorated career as an amateur, turned pro. I meant to ask you, I mean, kind of at what point, and this may have been early on, given how talented you were, did you know, hey, this is what I really want to do for a living? I really want to try to play on the PGA Tour. I mean, did you kind of know that when you went to Wake Forest, or was it the success you had in these notable national amateur tournaments, or kind of how did you come to that decision?
well, I think from the time I was about 16 on, when I qualified for my first U.S. Amateur in '66 at Marion, Gary Cowan beat Dean Beam in the playoff. I finished 18th as a 16-year-old was medal play.
Wow.
I felt like if I had played Marion now, I could go play. Um, anyway, it just seeing what the top amateurs were all about. Guys that had been professional or guys that were going to go professional. Seeing them play, it kind of gave me a boost in what I was able to do. And then winning, by the time I'd won the Southern before I got to Wake Forest, I knew I wanted to go play. So my time at Wake Forest was, about somewhat getting an education, more honing my golf skills and being ready to go when I did turn pro. And I went to school 3 years, got married halfway through my junior year. So, and like I said, I didn't come from money at all. So I was pretty much broken in debt. So I went ahead and turned pro as a junior and um, was fortunate enough to play well in some state events, make enough money. I didn't really have to get a sponsor. So I
Oh,
kind
that's good.
of
Yeah.
get through. Yeah. The end of '71, I was getting really close. And I played in the very first Disney tournament. I just got my tour card. Jack Nicklaus won. Dean Beeman finished second. I tied Arnold Palmer for third.
Wow.
I won $8,850 in that little the winner. So that was it.
But what a career. I mean, just for our listeners, I mean, 21 tour wins, obviously some other professional wins outside the tour, but 21 tour wins over 21 years, major. We'll talk about that. I still remember that vividly watching that on TV as poor Gene Littler flew that lead on the back, but we'll get to that. Players Championship at Spackman was at Sawgrass, Player of the Year, multiple Hall of Fames, just a tremendous experience. Those were the days before Gary McCord led the charge for the all-exempt tour. So you had to sort of, keep your card every year, finish in the top 60. Um, but what was that like? I mean, you had your card. I don't think you ever lost it. I mean, was that ever something that was in the back of your head? I mentioned it a little bit, Lanny, because one of the books that I've read over the year, I read a long time ago, was, of course, Frank Beard's great book, Pro, of his year 1969 on the tour. And I remember what always struck me, I mean, obviously he's a little older than you, but that he was so focused on making that top 60 and not having to be a rabbit. I mean, did that ever enter your mind, or what was that like back then?
I came out and as a rookie, all I got the right to do was Monday qualify.
Oh,
You know,
I see. Okay.
I wasn't exempt. So as a rookie on tour, and the bad thing, good and bad, I was being a U.S. amateur champion. Plus, I had been runner up in the Heritage Classic, a tour event, on tour in 1970 after I won the amateur. Bob Goldby won the Heritage. I finished 3 or 4 behind him. I played the last round with Arnold Palmer and Bob Murphy in
Wow.
'88, and I finished 4 shots ahead of the pro in third place. So
Wow.
I had already proved to myself I could play out there,
Got
and
it.
now I'm in a position, if I ask for a sponsor's exemption, I'm going to get it. The problem was you could only have three as a rookie on tour. So I had to space those out and take weeks off. Now, if you made the cut in an event, if I made the cut in Greensboro, I'm in the next week. So,
Right.
you weren't exempt. It wasn't an all exempt tour, but if you got in the tournament, made the cut, you were always in the next week. So I didn't miss any cuts. And so I was basically in the next week the whole time. And that worked out well for me. I won my end of my rookie year. I won the Sahara Invitational. I Arnold Palmer by a shot, which was, he was not happy. Number one, I was still supposed to be in school, and number two, I cost him a win. So
I was going to ask you about that. I know that was your first win this year. We were talking before, the last one was the GHO, 20 years later, but first one, Sahara in 1972. Were you paired with him or what was that like
I was
beating
really
the King?
proud of him. In fact, on 18, I had shot a pretty good last round. The guy leading the tournament was George Knudsen, uh,
Oh, yeah.
Indian guy who was famous for partying, let's say. And he had about a three-shot lead, and George had won the week before in Napa and Silverado up in Napa, California.
Yeah.
Carried him out of the casino, passed out three times before the last round. So easy on us the next day. And I came free back to win. Arnold had the birdie eight. I actually had a 6 foot putt for birdie on 18, getting ready to stand over at par five, and Arnold hit into me. He had dropped
Wow.
in front of the green on a false front. It rolled up. Gallery started going nuts and yelling and screaming. I had to back off my putt. Art Wall, I've never seen him so livid. He was really pissed at Arnold, quite honestly, for doing. He said, "Knock that in. Don't give him a chance." Well, I missed, but Arnold took three from the front edge, which I'm sure hurt even worse. So I got out of there with the win.
Fantastic. You mentioned Arnie. I mean, I saw that you a frequent practice round foursome was you and Bert Yancey against Weiskopf and Arnold Palmer, which is fascinating to me. I know that Bert and Tom were close. I mean, how did that get started?
I honestly don't remember how we got started. I was good friends with Weiskopf, and we had played a lot together, and obviously I'd played some with Arnold. We just had a money game one day, and it just clicked, and it was kind of funny because it was Bert and I playing Arnold and Tom. Now,
Right,
point in time where in '73, if you will, Arnold won on tour. Weiskopf had his biggest year ever on tour in '73, won the Open,
right, right.
Open, and about another. Hell, I think I was runner up to him twice that year. Um, I was playing well, and Bert won on tour. So all four of us were playing well. But quite honestly, Yance and I beat them every time. We wore them out. It used to drive Arnold crazy. So, I mean, we would go to majors and play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean,
Wow,
literally,
wow.
Canterbury, the PGA in '73, we played Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When Weiskopf won the Open Championship at Troon, I don't know, for some reason Arnold didn't go. We got Tony Jacklin played as his partner, but we played Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When I won the PGA at Pebble Beach, we played Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I had Arnold and Ed Snead. Bert Yancey was not playing by that time. So it was basically the two common denominators were me and Weiskopf, and then Arnold was there for most of it. So it was a good time, and we enjoyed our money games. It was never anything that was gonna break anybody, but it was enough that you paid attention. $20
Right.
automatic one downs on the team, and then we all played each other the same thing. So everybody had three bets going every time we played. So we
That's
basically
fantastic.
counting to go with us, keep track of the bets.
That's awesome. I love it. Let me ask you this. I want to sort of go to the 77 PGA, which I said I have vivid memories of this. Gene Littler, it's got 9 holes left. It's got a 5-stroke lead, and then starts making bogeys and runs into trouble. Nicholas is kind of lurking around, but he bogeys 17 and doesn't make the putt on 18. And I think you birdied 18, if I'm remembering
I did.
right. Just for our listeners' interest, historically, up until then, the majors always had a 18-hole playoff when there's ties, but they had changed it, and That was actually turned out to be the first sudden death playoff for a major championship between you and Gene. I think I saw this somewhere that you make a birdie on 18, you go grab a beer, and then what? Someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, playoffs starting pretty soon." Is that
So
right?
something along those lines. But yeah, I was kind of hanging around, lurking when Littler made mistakes. I mean, I kind of I'm a leaderboard watcher, so I knew what was going on. I
Right.
I had eagled both par fives in the front the last day, so and
Wow.
my goal that day, I was actually in, that was I had gallbladder and appendix surgery in '74, so healing up. It's a laparoscopic procedure. Now you're out in a week, back playing in a week. I was in the hospital 2 weeks. That's when they cut through four muscles and
Wow. Wow.
forward. So it was a rough time for me to get back playing well. And in '77, I was on my way to being exempt in the top 60, having a good year. I had a couple of runner-up finishes. Actually, was runner-up to Littler at Houston earlier in that year.
Okay.
So I was playing well, and PGA, I started the last round wanting to finish in the top 8, which would put me back in the Masters.
Right.
So I had a goal that I was playing for. That goal changed when Littler started making bogeys, and I realized at 16 that I had a chance. And I made a big par putt at 16. Then 17, I hit maybe the best 2 iron of my life. When they play 17 for majors, they play it back across the road at about 215. You know,
Right.
where it's 5, 6, 7 iron, and I hit 2 iron 12 feet behind the hole, and the putt did everything but go in the top edge. And when it didn't go down, I thought, well, there goes my chances. And then I hit a good drive at 18, laid up, had 92 yards to the hole. I remember it. And they had the big scoreboard behind the green, and I saw that Littler made another bogey, and now we still had to play 17. So I'm thinking, Lanny boy, you can make this. Right.
Right.
About 18 inches and got it to go in the side door. And then I remember standing behind the green watching Nicholas stand over his putt, to tie me. And I'm thinking to myself, and at this point in time, I still thought it was 18 holes on Monday. We
Right.
didn't. Nobody told us. So I'm thinking, yeah, I really don't want Jack to make the putt because I don't think me playing Jack at an 18-hole playoff on Monday is going to turn well for Lanny boy. So I'm thinking, please don't make this, Jack. And he didn't. He missed it. So, then I had to wait and watch Littler finish. So Gene had a good up and down for par at 17 and par at 18. Didn't really have a really good look at 18 at birdie. So Ed Snead, I ran into Ed. I'm halfway. I'm thinking I'm heading to the press tent.
Right.
And they say, no, we got to go to the first tee. The playoff started at 1. They
Wow.
they had already taken down gallery ropes. They had to go find a flag stick to put back in the hole at 1. I mean, it was they had already cleaned up, and,
Wow.
and so it was Wild West. You had about 10,000 people following one
Right.
twosome, no
Right.
gallery. So it was borderline out of control. And then we stand on the first tee. Don Padgett, president of PGA, looks at me and Littler and says, "By the way, whichever one of you guys wins this today, not only will you be PGA champion, but you will be a member of the '77 Ryder, because the PGA champion was an automatic go on the Ryder Cup." He said, "You'll knock Al Guy, but one of you guys is knocking Al Guyberger off the Ryder Cup team."
Wow.
So that's how I made my first Ryder Cup team as well. So that was pretty neat.
That is. I want to talk to you a little bit about the playoff because, again, I have this vague recollection, but you'll correct me that first, and for people who've never played Pebble, that first hole, that green has a big slope to it. And if I remember right, you missed the green with your second shot and were in that rough. And I mean, that was a really hard up and down, right? And you kind of just had to gouge it out and you made
Well,
that 12 footer.
yeah, I hit it. Actually, I hit a good shot. I hit it with the wrong club. I got to my shot in my fairway, the fairway, and my caddy at the time, a guy named Ralph Coffey, who's since passed. Ralph tended to get nervous and stutter. So I say, "Ralph, what have we got?" Well, Ralph started stuttering, and he could. Ralph, write it down. So he could not talk in the playoff.
Wow.
So I had to write it down. And so I said, yeah, I think it's a little 8 iron because it's up the hill instead of 9 iron. And I just, adrenaline, everything, I just flushed it. Never left the flag, went right over the left side and over the back. I had an impossible chip, but had
Right.
it rolled about 6 more inches, it would have been down there stiff. It hung up, and I had to make a downhill 15-footer because Littler had was about 25 feet, and he rolled it up to about 6 inches and tapped it in. Well, I made mine and stayed alive. Then we both hit it on the second hole and two, the par five. We both two putted for birdies. I actually hit the hole for eagle. And then three, we go to three. Here again, no gallery ropes, just wild. And I hit a great drive. And Littler came up short of the green with his second. I caught a kind of a funny line, hit a popper over the back edge of the green. I was in some really nasty rough then. Walking on the green, I saw Gene's lie was horrible. I mean, it was
Mm.
just awful into the green, and I didn't think he hit it close. He got it about 15 feet. I gouged mine down to about 6 feet. He missed, I made. That was it.
Wow, awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned the Ryder Cup because I wanted to spend a little time and talk about that. So, 8 Ryder Cups between 77, the first one we just talked about in 93. At the time, I think ties the record, probably with Billy Casper, if I'm remembering, for the most appearances at the time. Phil, since then has had more. But not just the 8 Ryder Cups, incredible record, 2011 and 3. We've had some great players, who have been in many Ryder Cups who don't have nearly the kind of Ryder Cup record you would expect given their greatness. But I mean, that is a fantastic record, 21 and a half points. And you were also there at an interesting time during that 77 to 93 period because this was sort of, again, to take people back. I'm old enough to remember the sort of the new era of the Ryder Cup, right? I think it was Jack who suggested we should add the Europeans to the British folks. And of course, that's around the time that Seve and Bernhard Langer, a couple of people from the continent are really coming into their own. And I'm thinking of the 83 Ryder Cup at PGA National, which was kind of a turning point. Normally we dominated the Ryder Cup. Generally, we certainly dominated it when it was on U.S. soil. But here we are at PGA National. Jack's captain, and matches are tied coming into the last day. And, everyone, of course, remembers Seve's crazy 3 wood from the fairway bunker against Fuzzy to save that match. And so it's coming down, and you're paying. I think you and Watson were in the last 2 matches. You had Jose Maria Canizares. Talk to me what you're feeling as you're walking up that 18th hole. You know that this is just a critical, critical match, and of course, you hit that phenomenal third shot. But what was that like for you? What were you feeling knowing that you were right at that your match was so critical for the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was down to me because I knew that Watson was also 2 up and 2 to play against Bernard Gallagher in the final match. So on the last match out playing Canizares, I know it's important because like I mentioned earlier, I'm a scoreboard watcher, so I know how everything stands. The other thing that I figured out was when my entire team is standing, 10 feet from me while I'm hitting every shot of the last hole, meaning something. So I actually hit a very good drive. I drove it past Canizares, and there's a corner of a lake there, and I was thinking laying up, and Canizares hit from behind me, hits it over the lake, where he's got probably 75 yards left to the flag. Well, I'm thinking I was going to lay up. Now I can't. I've got to go at it. I'm one down at the time, and I've played a match that I should have won this match 4-3, 3-2, 5-4. I mean, give you an example. The very first hole of the day, I hit it in the fairway. I hit it 6 feet. Canizares hits in the crap chunks. It gets it 50 feet from the hole. He holds the 50-footer for par. I missed the 6-footer. We tied up.
Oh God, that's
It
match play.
went
Yeah.
like that all day. I'm going to 16. I'm one down. He went to 16. I hit 2 iron, 12 feet from the hole. He hits it in the edge of the lake and two next to the green. He splashes it out from the lake on the green, 30 feet, holes that I missed 12-footer. We tied up.
Oh
I mean,
God.
it went like that all day long. I mean, I felt like I should have won easily. So now I'm one down playing 18. I made a 6-footer to stay alive at 17, for Christ's sake.
Wow.
That would have been the ultimate deal to lose that. But I remember hitting my second shot across the corner of the lake, and when I hit it, Curtis Strange started yelling at it to get up. I said, "Don't worry, it's solid." So, I mean, it was that kind of shot. So everybody's standing there, and Canizares did not hit. He hit first. He did not hit a good shot. Left it right on the front edge of the green, probably 40 feet from the hole. I've got 72 yards. I remember the number. And I just drilled a little low sand wedge in there, skipped up to the top level and stopped about a foot from the hole. I remember walking up on the green, Tom Kite's beside me. You know, he slapped me on the back. Great shot, way to go. To say something to him, and nothing came out. Probably the most nervous I've ever been hitting any one shot in my life.
Wow.
I think the fact that I played so fast, I was probably the fastest, you know, Fuzzy,
Right.
Nick Watson, you know, we
Right.
could have played three of us in 2 hours. They let us go. But I think the fact that I played so fast, the nerves didn't have a chance to bother me. Now, I did my usual routine, and almost while I'm thinking about the shot, I'd go, never mind, the ball's already in the air. Yeah, literally. And so Jack went back and kissed the divot. That was the big story of the day was, you know, then Jack later on said, you know, you need a wheelbarrow to carry your cojones around in big. That was always great. So, you know, having to do that and saving the Ryder Cup for Nicholas at that point in time was very, very special, obviously.
I bet one of the most famous shots in Ryder Cup history, right? Hitting it dead on 18. I want to talk to you a little bit about Sevi because I think you were 4-0 against him in Ryder Cup.
It was kind of interesting. Somebody said something the other day. I'm talking about how Sevi got the Ryder Cup off and running and was a big factor. And I had to correct him and say, you have to understand, Sevi's first year playing the Ryder Cup was 1979. I know he lost 4 out of 5 matches because Larry Nelson beat him in 3, and Larry beat him in singles.
Wow.
And then to make it even more so, I said, you have to understand that it took Sevi a while to figure out what the Ryder Cup was. Because
Right.
playing 81, he wanted to be paid to play the Ryder Cup matches in Europe in 81 when
Interesting.
Paul was captain. And he didn't play. I think he was figuring the Ryder Cup would just fold up without him there. It didn't. It went on, was a great spectacle in Europe. And he figured out that, you know, he is not bigger than the game or the Ryder Cup. And
Right.
so 3, he came back and played and was always a factor and a force. But and when you played him, you had to be ready for some kind of confrontation. Sevi was a get in your face kind of guy, and you know he was, you know, we knew he would try to do anything to win, from coughing when you were playing or whatever. I mean, he was just that's just the way he was. He was going to be that way. And I played him one more time. I think Marco Mir and I played. He and Manuel Pinero at the Belfry, and we beat him really bad. We had him 6 down, 6 to play. So
Was that the one where the first hole you hit his coin and it went
yeah,
into the hole? Tell
that,
that story. I love that story.
well, that was just it. See, I mean, here again, you know, something that happened just by accident. He had to get right in my face. So as it ended up, the last 2 people to putt on the first hole were me and Sevi. I'm about 25 feet. He's about 15 feet, 12 feet. I had him move his coin because in my line. Well, I pulled my putt, it hit his coin, kicked right, and went in the hole. So he comes running to me. You do that on purpose. You have me move my coin so you can hit it, so you can make that putt. I mean, a coin as big as a quarter. Yeah, really? I said, yes, I'm that bleeping good. Don't. I mean, that's what you had to do with him,
Yeah,
because otherwise he was going to continue to try and run over you. But if you got back in his face and he saw you, it was no BS, and you know, then he'd go ahead and play, and it got quieter.
I love it. I mean, did he try? I mean, you mentioned what a fast player you famously were. Did he try to slow play you at all?
Not really. I think that, you know, everybody knew those were long days in Ryder Cups, and I had developed a habit of walking slowly quite early on in my career, because if I didn't, I ended up standing around all the time waiting to hit my shots. In fact, I remember one time I was playing when I won the World Series of Golf in '77 after the PGA. A friend of mine said, I was playing with Weiskopf the last day. I said, Weiskopf's out in front of you. He's getting it. You need to walk fast. I said, I don't walk fast. I walk slow for a reason because everything else I do is quick, and it kind of slowed me down. And it's it was just I knew how to control my environment, if you will.
Right.
So that was what I did. So
That's that makes
but
sense.
the other thing you were mentioning about the exempt tour, when I won the PGA in '77, the PGA carried a 10-year exemption.
Right.
Well, then the very 2 weeks later, I won the World Series of Golf. That carried a 10-year exemption. So a year, I don't win in '78, then '79, I won the LA Open and I won the Players Championship, which also carried a 10-year exemption. So I've won 3 out of 4 of my wins carried 10-year exemptions.
Wow.
They didn't add them up to 30. You just got the most recent one.
I love that. That's a great point. Let me sort of ask you just a couple other Ryder Cup things. So just advancing the clock a little bit, you mentioned Belfry in 85, then of course 87 is back at Jack's place, Muirfield Village, where we lose on our home soil. Lots of people had trouble with the 18th hole. Remember that. Then we sort of advance a little bit. 91. Dave Stockton is captain. We're at Kiowa, and that was, it was a lot of fervent emotion there, the so-called war at the shore. What was that team like for you and winning that? I mean, obviously it came down to the very end with, if I'm remembering right, was Bernhard and Hale Irwin, I think, on the last hole. But what was that experience like for you?
It was great. I mean, it was just a terrific week. Dave was a great captain to play for. He was a player's man. He understood the whole mentality. I'd actually been on a Ryder Cup team with David in 1977 when I won the PGA. He was on the team at Lytham St. Anne's with me and Nicholas and Hale and Watson and I were the babies on that team at 26, 7 years old. So yeah, I've known Dave a long time. Ultimately, a lot of respect for him, and it was great playing for he and Kathy, his wife. And Kiowa was brand new. We went in and played it early before it even opened. So the PGA wanted to watch us play, so they had an idea how to set it up. They had no clue, having nobody ever played the golf course, and it was hard. It was a hard golf course. But it's funny you mentioned Hale and Langer because I was actually the next to last group in front of them.
Oh,
I was playing Mark James right in front of Hale and Bernhard, and I closed out James 3-2. I played really, really well in my singles match against him. Probably shot as good as anybody played that day. So, but I did not want to go to 17. I was 2 up with three to play and 116 to close him out 3-2. So I didn't have 17. But
that was a brutal par three. I still remember
it was just
poor Calcavecchia. Yeah.
a hard golf course.
Yeah, very hard. No question about it. And then, you get the honor of being captain at Oak Hill in 95. That was, I know, a tough defeat. I know your friend Tom Watson called you that evening after the loss. I mean, what was that like? Was it tough not being able to be a player and just watching, or what was it like to be captain?
Yeah, it was tough, but at the same time, it made me realize I feel for Keegan Bradley right now playing so well that he could probably make the team. I just don't unless he gets somebody else to actually come in and run it, kind of as a co-captain with him. I don't think he has a chance. The duties as captain, you're just too busy all week with press conferences, doing things while the players are playing. You get to the course hour and a half before the first player does to get things ready for them. You're there. I join them at night when they've already been sitting down. They had already sat down for dinner. I get there halfway through dinner at night, back in the team rooms and stuff. So it's just a lot of obligations, things to do when you're captain. Makes for a long week. It was a tough loss. We hung in there tight all week long. Actually, Tom Lehman played here against Seve in the first match out the last day. I knew they were going to. Lehman was playing good, and he's a tough guy,
Yeah.
and he did not want to lose. And I knew it was supposed to be chilly that morning, so I figured my big old Minnesota boy I'd stick it first. And sure enough, and the Europeans had a habit of running out one of their name guys first off. At Kiel, they had Faldo. I'm trying to how it went, but they had always had a Sevi or a Faldo or somebody. They wanted to get the first point the last day, so they
Right.
put somebody out there. And Lehman went out and took care of Sevi again. He had a confrontation. Curtis Strange and I grabbed Lehman before he teed off. Said, "Somewhere, sometime, he's going to do something. Get right back in his face. That's what you got to do." Well, sure enough, on the 12th green, Sevi pulled something about who was away this or that, and Lehman got right in his face. It was classic. So, but he beat Sevi. And then, so I had a 3-point lead with 11 matches to go. And, they played well. We didn't. So that was just simple as it was down the stretch. We had Corey Pavin took out Langer, who was there probably as good a player as they had at the time. So, beat their good player thanks to Corey. And, but there are some other guys just lost and had tough losses. I mean, it was, it was a tough one to take because, Penny and I put 2 years of our life into that thing. Yeah,
Sure.
made trips. I made 2 trips to Rochester, New York, to do things for the European captain Bernard Gallagher, who is a really, really good friend of mine. I actually got his kid into Wake Forest, so I mean we go back a long way. Bernard and I do, and great friends. The first match I ever played in Ryder Cup in '77, Hale Irwin played, and I played he and Brian Barnes. So
Oh, wow.
I've been friends with Bernard since before '77. So
Wow.
then we go with in '95. So that's he was a dear friend. I was glad to go do things for him to make he couldn't get over from England, so to make things easier for him, I made the trip. So we did stuff like that back then.
Yeah, no, that's great. Before I leave, the last thing on the Ryder Cup before I touch on a few other things. I mean, you know, 8 times playing captain, you're an ideal person to ask this for. I mean, we look across the last 20, 30 years of Ryder Cups, we have not done great. Certainly have not won in Europe. We've had, they had the great comeback at Medina, the one at Hazeltine. I mean, we've had our chances. I'm just curious, you're such a keen observer. Is there, is there anything you can sort of look to account for sort of maybe we haven't performed as well, particularly in Europe, as we would have liked, or you just think it's just they're good players on both sides and this is what happens?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised at the European thing as well. There've been some really close ones. I was actually on the last team that won over there in '93 with Tom Watson. Uh,
Right,
I don't know. I mean, I've got some private thoughts on why we haven't done better. I think the PGA is sometimes. I think they got out of their own lane sometimes picking captains. The PGA of America owns the Ryder Cup.
right,
The longest time, one of the main requisites to being a Ryder Cup captain is being a PGA champion. You
right,
start back, with the exception of Billy Cooper and Tom Watson, you go through everybody from Nicholas, Trevino, me, Floyd, Stockton, all PGA champions.
right.
That was and I think they got out of their lane with that, and I don't know why. Um, they missed out on Larry Nelson. He should have been captain.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the biggest oversights in history. Um, they got into kind of a clique of the same bunch of guys here in the last 15 years. And I think back of the captains I played for, and then I think of the captains recently, and I see Nicholas, I see Trevino, I see Casper, I see Watson, I see Raymond, I see a fiery Dave Stockton. I didn't see that personality from a lot of
Right.
the recent captains. They're just
Yeah.
different. They're great players, nice gentlemen, but just different than what I know I played for. Okay, so and then I think you've gotten everybody has seen that a lot of the players want their buddy on the team. They want to play with their
Right.
friend, and that's the reason you have a captain to figure out who goes best on this golf course together. I mean,
Right.
I played on 8 Ryder Cups. I never one time, not one time, did I ever ask a captain to play with somebody. I'm like, am I playing? Yeah, great. I am. Yeah, great. Who with? I mean, that was the way I treated it, and I would
Right.
go whoever it was, and I played with everybody from Larry Mize, Craig Stadler, Hale Irwin, Larry Nelson, uh, Payne Stewart, Raymond Floyd. I mean, there's 7, 8 guys that I've played matches with, either best ball or alternate shot, and had success with. I had the kind of game that fit with a lot of people. I was always surprised that, I played with Hale in 77, and then we played twice in 91. I was surprised we never, our games were almost mirror images of each other. Hale being a little better putter, me probably a better pitcher and wedge player. But we drove it the same length. We both drove it straight. We're both good iron players. And whenever, nobody came close to beating us when we played together. I mean, we were just almost untouchable. Same thing with Larry Nelson. Larry and I won 4 times in 79. And then we didn't play again until 87. So, but every captain has their own ideas and theories, and I never questioned it. I'm looking at who they are. I'm going to go question something Lee Trevino and Billy Casper. I think so, or Stockton or Raymond. No, so I don't know. I think it's a personality thing. Just the way that the game has evolved. That these guys, we were more independent guys. We were playing for our livings.
Right.
I lived off my tour winnings. These guys today don't live off their tour winnings.
Right. That's
right. They live everything else. They make it. And they're all flying private.
Right.
That's that. It's just different mindset. If it was a little bit more immediacy to what they were doing, trying to achieve something more than just, I don't know. To me, Rydership was always bigger than me. And I was meant to be a member of the team. And what can I do to make that team better? I don't see that attitude a lot today.
Yeah, that's well said. Thanks for that. Let me turn to a couple of other. I obviously lived in Dallas for a long time, and I can't talk to you without getting your thoughts on the great Ben Hogan. It sounds like you had some experience with him. Of course, he was famously at Shady Oaks and grew up in Fort Worth. Love to hear kind of what those experiences were like. And I always, heard that there was nothing like not only seeing but hearing the way he hit a golf ball. But I'm curious kind of what your experiences were like and what your memories are of him.
I had nothing but great experiences with Ben. We got to be very good friends. I was with the Hogan Company for 8, 10 years maybe, and a friend of mine that was worked at the Hogan Company played a lot of golf with Ben and with another amateur who was a friend of Ben's by the name of John Miles. And so we ended up playing some games with them over the years at Shady Oaks. I probably ended up playing with Hogan probably 12, 15 times. My wife and I had dinner with Ben and Valerie a couple times. I was one of the guys who would sit down and have a clear drink with him, either after the round, and tell stories and listen to him. And there were several things that happened that were really unique with Ben and I. We were playing one time, Miles in place. There was 3 of us playing, and a guy drives up on about 14 or 15, and he's got 2 things going on. Hogan didn't like on a golf course. He's wearing shorts, and he had a. And the guy looked at us and said, "Hey, I'm going to join you guys the rest of the way in." Ben looked at me and said, "You ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir." Well, I get home, we go in and have a drink. And again, Ben is apologizing the whole time to me for this guy interrupting our game. He could not believe somebody was that rude. So 2 days later at home, I get a letter in the mail and a check for $4. I was up 2 skins at the time on Ben. So I got a $4 check, which I still have, obviously, along with a letter of him again apologizing.
Wow.
Me for that. So that was pretty unique. And then later on, if you remember the famous 1-iron Ben lost at Marion, remember
Yes.
Shot to 18, 72nd hole.
Right.
Somebody stole the 1-iron out of his bag. They don't know whether it happened between 18 in the locker room or left his bag around in the locker room. Somebody stole it there. Anyway, I'm at home one day and I get a call from Jackie Murdoch, who was a former basketball coach at Wake Forest. Actually, was a first-team All-American guard back in the day at Wake Forest. Great basketball player, and he was a golf nut. He said, "Lanny, I think I found the 1-iron that was stolen out of bag at Marion. I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No." I said, "Where would you have found it?" He said, "Well, I chase old clubs. I was in a pawn shop in Raleigh and I found it in a barrel."
Wow.
So I said, "Send it to me. I'll take it to Ben, see what he thinks." As soon as I got the club in the mail from Jackie, I knew it was Hogan's because it still had his grip on it. Ben's grips were very, very distinctive. It was a reminder, except it wasn't a reminder built into the grip. The guys that built his clubs would put it in a vise upside down, put two-way tape on it. Then they would put a piece of cord at a certain angle where it fit in Ben's grip. And that's how he would grip the club. And this had that. It had the cord grip. It had the reminder right where he has it. And it looked like something he would have been playing in the early 1950s. I take it to the factory. I said, "Ben, I think I got something of yours." And I handed it to him, and he put it in his hand, got a big smile on his face, said, "I haven't seen this in a long, long time." And of course,
Awesome.
that's now hanging in golf, USGA Museum's golf house. They hold it with kid gloves and the whole
Yeah. Oh,
deal.
that's one of the
But
most famous clubs
I
of all time.
his club back to Ben Hogan.
Wow, that is amazing. I'd never heard that story. I mean, I knew it got lost. I never heard about that. That is awesome. Um, Let me touch a little bit on sort of after your playing career. You obviously did broadcast work. You mentioned Jimmy Nance when we were chatting earlier, and you were CBS for 6 seasons, and you had a 13-year run, lead analyst for the Champions Tour on the Golf Channel, which you've now wrapped up. What was that like? Did you enjoy that being
Yeah,
that part of it?
it's funny. I mean, I don't know that I would have ever started with CBS. That I thought it was only going to be 5, 6 years. I expected it to be 20. I got kind of stabbed in the back by
Yeah,
one
you did. I was
score.
very unfortunate. Yeah.
uh, because Jimmy and I had a great relationship. I mean, I remember the last tournament I did was the PGA, I think in Medina, I'm not sure. Might have been '06, '07, whatever. And Jimmy said to me, he said, "You are great. We are right where we need to be going forward. I am tickled to death with what's going on." And the funny thing is, Jimmy didn't know what that was going to happen to me, and I didn't know, obviously, but it happened to Jimmy in two sports that year. They also kind of pulled Billy Packer from him in college basketball without telling him. And he and
Wow.
really, really close. And I knew Billy. Billy Packer was the assistant basketball coach at Wake Forest under Jack McCloskey. Remember Trader Jack from Detroit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jack,
Wow.
Jack McCloskey was the head basketball coach at Wake. Billy Packer was his assistant and top recruiter. So I knew
Wow.
from Wake Forest. And so Jim had two Wake Forest men working with him, and then both of them got pulled in 1 year, so he was not happy. But I still stay in touch with Jim and hear him. And then I was going to go back to playing, and that's when my back went to hell. Uh,
Oh,
Everything had gotten. I never had a back issue when I was playing, but when I did TV, I guess all the sitting,
yeah.
everything compressed. I went back and was doing like I had always done. I was going to hit 700,000 balls a day, and I'm back working, and my back just kind of blew up.
Oh,
Uh, I had went to a place called Laser Spine Surgery where they butchered me,
oh,
and I
oh.
ended up winning a 7-figure settlement against them. But I had to have 3 more surgeries to correct what was done. So I've had a total of 6 back surgeries. I'm now triple fused in my lower back.
Oh,
You know,
wow. I didn't realize that.
so yeah, it is what it is. But that's why I don't play much anymore. But only reason I do play is so I can play with my boys. Because nothing's better than that. But I got lucky, so I went back when the back got bad. I went to Golf Channel, and somebody had approached me that they really needed somebody for Champions Tour. So I said, why not? I know the guys. I've played almost
Sure.
courses. It was a great fit. I ended up working with a guy named Bob Papa, who is the voice of New York Giants football, one of the really great people in that business. He's done like 5 Olympics and all kinds of stuff, and just a delight to work with. I'm working with Bob Papa and Billy Ray Brown and John Mahaffey and John Cook, and we just had a great team. We had more fun than law should allow. Doing what we did. It, it was a good time.
That's great. And Yeah, you mentioned your boys. I mean, I know they both, I mean, Travis played at Wake Forest, Tucker played University of Arizona, so the genes came through. I mean, not at your level of success, but both pretty significant D1 players, for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun for me to watch them play growing up, and I watched a lot of their college tournaments, and they both have their strengths. And you know, Tucker thought he had to be too perfect, and Travis could have always played a little bit better. So it was always something. But they were fun to play. They can still both really play. So it's fun for me to go watch them right now. So I get a kick out of
I
that.
bet. I bet. Let me sort of touch on one final thing. I'll get you out of here on this, although it's obviously a big topic. I mean, which is the pro game today. I'm sort of curious your thoughts on it. I mean, from at least as I look at it, you go back like I do, to the days of the Persimmon Woods and Balata balls and you those small sweet spots, and if you mishit those drivers, they could really spin offline in a hurry. To where we have gotten to all these years later with 460cc drivers and the ball optimized for the driver and much bigger sweet spots, and I often wonder, Lanny, kind of how we got here. I don't know if it was our friends at the USGA being a little gun shy after the square grooves, lawsuits from Ping or what caused it. But we've kind of gotten to this point now where the equipment is so different than what it
It,
was.
it's funny you mentioned the square. See, I am a very big believer that the thing that changed everything was the PGA Tour losing the suit to Carson Solheim.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That not happened, the ball could not be what it is. Had we tried to play today's ball with the B grooves that I played with, which were further apart than they are today,
Right.
uh, with the clubs that I came out with, you couldn't do it. Every shot would be acting like a flyer. You couldn't control the ball. So playing the old Balata ball spinny, that's and then when they came with the square grooves and they made them legal, then they started ripping all the Balata balls to hell, so they had to come with something else. So
Right.
there's I've long felt that we had a vote on tour at the time before the lawsuit against square grooves, and 85% of the players on tour voted against square grooves. When
Wow.
voting for it were the people who played ping clubs.
Right.
So probably been told to by their people at ping. So that was the way that was. Now, I think that once that happened and once we lost that suit, I think right then and there we should have had bifurcation.
Yeah.
And that, and think about it, every other sport does. They
Right.
play bats in college and they play wooden in baseball. The baseballs are different. The basketballs are different. 3-point line, everything's different. It's not the same in any sport. So I don't see any reason we couldn't have had our rules on tour. I mean, you can go to so many other things that have increased the ball going so far, not just the ball. When I was on tour, when I came on tour, the average golf shaft and an iron weighed 132 grams. I'm playing a set of 100-gram shafts right now, and that's considered still kind of heavy. My driver shaft weighed anywhere from 128 to 132 grams. Now I'm swinging a 50-gram driver shaft. Damn good and well, as those things have gotten better, you can swing those harder, faster, and you
Right.
put more weight on the end, the ball is going to go further because
Right.
you can just swing in the because of the size of the clubs and the heads. The kids in the lighter shafts, the kids have grown up swinging harder. We never
Right.
swung that hard. We were trying to get that damn piece of block on the end of that telephone pole in the air. So I mean, it was just different. But what allowed us to do that was the spinning Balata ball. So it all fit back then.
Right.
But everything has changed. But I don't think there's any question that the first thing that started it was us losing the suit to Carson Solheim on tour. I felt then and there with over 80% of the tour players voting against square grooves, we should have gone to bifurcation right then and there. Had that happened, it might, who knows where it'd be right now.
It's a great point. I mean, do you see? I mean, now of course we have this kind of modest ball rollback that the USGA's proposed, and even that, I mean, nothing with the clubs, nothing with anything, just the ball, and even that the PGA of America I know is opposed to it. I mean, do you see how do you see anything being done on this? I mean, it's obvious. I mean, from my standpoint, I always think like I always wonder if it kind of flattens the skill level. I mean, I sort of feel like, someone like Rory, who's such a great driver. I mean, I think the differences would be even more apparent if he was playing, the kind of some old equipment. And but anyway, and there's a lot of other issues, obviously sustainability, having to build bigger golf courses. You're involved in architecture, that, and I mean, where do you see this going? Do you see any of the genie being put back in the bottle at all, or?
Well, a question, Larry. I don't know. I mean, honestly, if I'm not mistaken, the rollback is it's going to stop at a certain point in time, and it's stopping it at club head speeds and swing speeds that they haven't even achieved yet.
That's right. It's putting a
So you're
ceiling on
not
it. You're right.
talking about the ball coming backwards. You're talking about stopping it
That's
at
right.
at a certain speed,
You're
which,
right.
will that ball go back then? I don't know. Nobody playing today is probably going to be around to see it. So I don't know what all the panic is. I think it would behoove the PGA of America to go along with it. It's not going to hurt them at all. It's not going to decrease the enjoyment of the game in any way, shape, or form. It's going to be very telling to watch this week at Oakmont with the U.S. Open. This is a golf course that goes back to Hogan winning and Johnny Miller and Nicklaus winning there and on up, and it's really stood the test of time, even with today's equipment. Now they've lengthened some of the holes considerably, but the yardage is only like 7,350 or so,
Right. That's right.
which is not long by today's standards at all. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays. I'll be interested in seeing how guys play the course. I played well there in 73, the last round. I was actually the group in front of Johnny Miller,
Oh,
and I
wow.
bogeyed 18 for 65 right in front of him. Three
Wow.
people broke 70 in the last round. Nicholas shot 67, my 65, and Johnny's 63. I had a chance. I thought if I had birdied 18, unfortunately, my foot slipped on the tee and I hit it in the fairway bunker. But had I birdied 18, I might have had an outside shot. So,
Wow.
so it was, yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting stuff. But it was, anyway. I'm anxious to see what happens this week. Where the rough is, we'll see.
Yeah, 15 on the stimp, 5-inch rough. It looks pretty good. I'll give a final thing. I'll get you out here on this. As we're talking about Oakmont. Any predictions for us? I mean, your fellow Dallas resident, Mr. Scheffler, has just been unbelievable the last couple of years, and he's kind of a favorite anytime he tees it up these days. But what do you have any predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I like Scotty. He has played an Open there, so that's a good thing. So he's seen the course. I want to say he shot 69 in the first round, then maybe missed a cut. So he obviously had a bad second round. But he's seen it. He knows what to. It's always great when you go back to a course that you've played in the past. Your expectations, or you've already thought through how to play it in your mind. So
Right, right.
you get that out of the way. You haven't got to go around saying, where do I hit it here? Where do I? You already know where you're going to hit. You thought it through. He's probably sat at home. I don't know if Scotty drinks, but maybe it drank a cigar and been thinking about it. So trying to figure out where I'm going to go and how I'm going to play it. Sometimes for me back in the day, I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about my swing, my game, how I was going to play the course.
Sure.
Hard time getting back to sleep. I'll just take a nap tomorrow sometime. But that's the way I was. But I was kind of wired that way. But Scotty's also a member at Preston Trail where I play. So
Right. That's right.
he's a very, very hard worker. I like the way he practices. He really works on distance control, which I think is extremely important. You watch when he's playing well, he rarely hits it over a green or comes up way short. He's almost always hole high. People talk about dispersion patterns right and left. The dispersion pattern front to back is also what you're after, so that that when you hit that club a certain way, it's going a certain distance. I used to sit there and hit. I remember I watched my oldest boy hit balls, and he hit one. I got it. He hit one good, and I got it. There, said, Travis, you don't have it. I mean, when you can hit 35 shots in a row, they go through the same window, at the same altitude, same window up there in a row. You'll be close, but you'll never have it. That's I mean, I would sit there, and that's what I would do: is how many shots can I make look just alike, so that
Right,
swing got automatic. You know,
right.
didn't have to think about it. And then boom, I hit a fiver and it went there. That was what I would work on.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, Jordan Spieth talks about, Scotty's crazy distance control. It's a great point. I mean, that's a key thing to what he's doing well. Lanny, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. Really loved getting a chance to chat with you. If you're ever out here in LA with our friend Mr. Katz, maybe we can tee it up sometime or at least see each other. But thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Yeah, we're finishing a couple of nice projects in LA. We just have done the first 9 holes at Braemar, and we're
Right.
the second 9 holes right now. So we're really excited to see the finished product there. It's going to be quite a change from what they had before. So
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. I know you guys are doing great work there. We'll look
thank
forward
you.
to it. Thank you so much, Lanny.
We're very busy. Yeah, good
Yeah,
take.
appreciate it.